So I decided, with the renovations going on at the theater and the fact that we only have 4 or 5 movies at a time now, I figured that even though we just got it this week, life may have been on its last legs, so I kind of went ahead and decided I should catch it before we lose it. Well, it turns out we're not losing it, but at least I've seen it now, so I'm just gonna say up front now that I'm not gonna I'm not gonna spoil anything out. Like, I'm not gonna say exactly stuff that happens as far as spoilers go, but if you're one of those people that thinks that every little minuscule thing is a spoiler, I will kind of hint at some stuff, so you might not want to hear that. But, you know, after a week, maybe you've already seen this if you were going to, so it doesn't matter, but I thought I'd say that just in case. So, the thing I kept hearing a lot was how much this looked like an Alien movie. Just Alien specifically. Ridley Scott's first movie. With a little bit of The Thing. I didn't really get The Thing vibes from this, but I do get that it can kind of seem very, especially since we're kind of in a very, there are a lot of sci-fi movies coming out lately that are very high profile, and also some low budget, low profile ones as well, that it's gonna be pretty easy. It's getting harder and harder to make a movie in space that doesn't feel like another movie. So you kind of want to go in giving it the benefit of the doubt and kind of going easy on it if it should come to that. But still, you know, we can. I'm sure there's plenty of creative options you can do to kind of branch off the more familiar stuff, but I don't know. But the thing that we have here is they come across this life form that they have plucked from out of space and realize that this could be the first sign of extraterrestrial life, and they're going to call it Calvin. And they figure out all the ins and outs of it and which parts of it represent what, and what exactly they can make of how its body works and all that other stuff. But instead of bringing it down here, they're just going to keep it up there, and they're going to kind of try to, you know, figure out what it is by poking it and electrocuting it and doing a whole lot of stuff to piss it off. Because of course. Because they knew they were in a horror sci-fi movie, and they had to make sure that they became a body count as quickly as possible. Because, you know, they're smart enough to become astronauts and scientists and all that, but, you know, once they see something dangerous, it's like, let's do dangerous things to the dangerous thing. But when it starts, there is a lot. It actually kind of surprised me how, I mean, it shouldn't, but for some reason I was surprised by how much gravity is in this. Well, there's an extreme lack of gravity, but as far as the Sandra Bullock movie, the Alfonso Cuarón movie, where we kind of start with just this, it's a promising start too, where we just see blackness, we just see darkness, and there's this kind of dooming score happening over it, kind of like a small overture into Dread, and then this whole big opening scene happens. It's like 15 minutes in before we get the title card, and the movie's only like an hour 43. And it's they Eternal Sunshine did a little bit. But I felt like that was kind of a strong opening shot anyway, and then it just we just kind of get thrusted right into this. We're like right in the middle of it. Which in movies can be a really good thing when there's like no extra bullshit, there's no extra fat. It's just happening and you have to catch up. But in a case like this, it's kind of hard to, when you're doing your characters are most likely going to get picked off one by one thing. It's kind of nice to know them a little bit, otherwise you have no idea why you're watching what it is you're watching. So this is one of those movies where it might be a fault that we start so quickly, because there's a few recognizable faces here. Obviously, Gyllenhaal, Rebecca Ferguson, and Ryan Reynolds are our poster, and Ryan Reynolds is here, doing his Ryan Reynolds thing. I don't really care for that criticism that gets thrown at a lot of actors, like Clooney especially, where just very lazy people criticize him by saying all he does is play himself, whatever that means. Um, and I typically try to avoid stuff like that. But, you know, I do kind of wish that Ryan Reynolds could branch off a little bit. I know people are, screaming, like, what about Buried and stuff like that, and there's movies like The Nines, or the Amityville remake he did, I thought he was pretty good in. But now that he's really found a way to embrace this same personality he's had since, Van Wilder, through Waiting, through even through movies like Blade Trinity, he's always kind of in this same place. And the reason that sucks especially now is because he's like the only charismatic character in this movie. So the only thing we really have to a character that can really draw our attention away from something besides just, exactly what's happening, is Ryan Reynolds doing the Ryan Reynolds thing. And you saw how much money Deadpool made. Obviously people are not sick of that, for the most part. Some of us, I kind of wish he'd do maybe at least a little something different, but it's so weird that our headliner here is Jake Gyllenhaal, because number one, you kind of just look at this movie in general and wonder how he ended up in it, especially with the kind of movies he's been putting out, and the kind of roles he's been taking on, and just doing all this interesting subject matter. And here he's like male Ripley without the badassery. There's like this movie stars Jake Gyllenhaal, and for like the first half of the movie, he's like the least important character. Like, he has the least to do. He's just kind of there. Sometimes if you really try, you may be able to forget he's even in it. But then obviously, once we start getting to a certain point, then he's going to kind of, show that he needs to do something. I suppose that's not too dissimilar from Sigourney Weaver in the first Alien, but at least, she made her presence known through the whole thing. But apart from that, also, it's just kind of, and we do have those introductions, the ones that really don't matter, because it's one of those ones where the people are on screen and they're like interacting through Skype or whatever, with children that are asking them questions from Earth. And we get, like, their name and, like, their rank on the screen when they appear. But first of all, nobody remembers that shit. Especially when there's, like, 6 or so characters like there are here. With that, even in there, it's just the characters are hardly identifiable at all. They're just unidentifiable characters in distress. For the next hour and 40 minutes or so, that, as I said, make dumb decisions despite the fact that they are supposedly really smart, science-y astronaut people. And there are, talking about the movies that you can kind of sense in this, there's some pretty obvious ones, but then there's stuff like, there was Europa Report that had, like, Charlotte Copley in it, and then Last Days on Mars or something like that. It was Liev Schreiber. I saw that movie. It's so forgettable. I'm wondering if I'm remembering its title correctly. So there's a lot of stuff like that in here. But then there's also, remember in like the late 90s or early 2000s when we just had a really long string of really shitty sci-fi thrillers like Supernova with James Spader, or Sphere. Remember Sphere? I'm getting a lot of those from this as well. I don't hate those movies probably as much as, the majority, but they're still not very good. And they certainly don't evoke much of any of the, higher quality recent movies, or not so recent movies, that you could pinpoint that you see in here. And when this starts off, they name it Calvin, and when we see him, he's kind of this, like, transparent creature type thing, and he's small. He kind of looks like a, well, not to mention he's actually in one at some point, but he actually himself looks like a discarded latex glove or something. And he's just kind of flopping around doing his thing until shit starts to get real. And you kind of wonder, I think it's supposed to be terrifying. It's supposed to be akin to, say, when we first saw the alien jump out of John Hurt's stomach and then ran around. The kind of fear that brought on. But it just kind of looks ridiculous, honestly. And then he eventually grows, and has tentacles and shit. But it's... you're just sensing quite a lack of creativity through the whole thing. Where he just has tentacles and he can squeeze you like an anaconda or something. There's a scene with a mouse in there that is kind of... will bring back memories of that opening scene of Hollow Man. And there are some pretty intense death scenes. Like, that is something that you have to give it. And I also liked that they were able to do some of these death scenes, but they didn't always wallow in gore. I mean, there's some gross shit in there, but they do add some, other ways of doing this that are equally terrifying as, like, the really bloody stuff. There's also a really nice little thing shortly after that when somebody, is drifting off into infinity, into the abyss, and we just know that this is their fate, like, they're gone now. And we get this shot where inside the ship they have one of those, holographic, like, outlines of the ship around them, and it's like, showing what's going on outside or how close they are to shit or whatever. And we see on this hologram the person drifting away, and they kind of are getting farther and farther away from the ship until they've reached as far as this hologram will go, and they just fizzle out. And then that's kind of it's like a small thing, but it just kind of shows you the whole... really plays into that person is gone, like, forever. And so I thought that was kind of an effective little detail. But even so, this is one of those movies that's also so unremarkable that if there's one thing that you can often say about these recent sci-fi movies, even like Passengers from a few months ago, no matter how good or bad they are as a whole, typically you can praise the effects. Because our space effects, even before Gravity, were looking really, really damn good. And they still do with movies like Passenger. Even if Passenger sucks, the effects still look really good. This movie is so average that you can't even really say that with any passion. They just kind of look... I don't know if we've just seen it so many times now and it's starting to wind down, or if the effects just really aren't as spectacular as they are in all these other runs of sci-fi movies we've had. But that's what I'm saying, though. It's not bad or anything, and there are actually some legitimately effective scenes, but it's just so... it just doesn't matter. This movie's existence doesn't matter at all. Like, it might have... even if it does affect you, it will not be for very long, I imagine. You'll go right into, Ghost in the Shell next week or something, and, oh yeah, by the way, that was out, too. And yeah, like I said, with an actor like Gyllenhaal, who's really putting these extremely memorable movies on his filmography now, this is a weird one to be in there. Because there's just really nothing stand out about it at all. And then we get to this point, leading up to this, nothing was given away to me, but something that was really built up before I saw this was the ending. And people were like really going crazy for this ending and saying how it's like so anti-Hollywood and stuff like that. And it's a bleak ending. And from the talk I was hearing, people were really playing this up like it was some really big deal, like something that Hollywood rarely does. This is a pretty by-the-book bleak ending. I think people really love to sound cynical and say Hollywood is all happy endings. I think people tend to forget how many movies have been straying away from the happy ending for a good decade now. Um, and this is it's quite obvious where it's headed about 20 minutes or so before we get there. Like if you just know the plot of this movie and you hear that it has a bleak ending, you can probably think for a few seconds and know exactly what that ending is. There's really, yeah, even its, you know, supposedly anti-Hollywood ending is just, yes, we've seen this ending before. There's really there's really nothing remarkable about it. Um, but I do like the pacing surprisingly good. I do like that pretty much the whole movie is in zero gravity. Like there's usually those scenes where they're all standing around a room and they're trying to discuss what they're gonna do and what the issues are and how they're gonna handle this or whatever. It's all pretty constant. Like it kind of gives this sense of constant movement. There is an opening scene at the beginning talking about played out shit. When we get a long take through the whole station and everything, and it's like, yes, it gives us that feeling of weightlessness, and it gives you that feeling we're in space and all that. You know, all the stuff Gravity did. But it's like, you know, praising a long take just for being a long take is really getting played out. And it's it's like, yes, we've seen the one take introductory shot many times before, no doubt will many times after. It's just another thing that's in this movie that has no impact on anything. And to top it all off, last but not least, our end credits song is Spirit in the Sky. Like, the most overused song in TV or movies in a long time. I feel like every damn corner I turn when I'm watching something has this goddamn song. Commercials, other movies, TV shows, anything. Trailers. Just anything. And it's Miami Blues. Miami Blues is the champion for this song. That's where it starts and stops with me. And Miami Blues is 27 years old. So, so yes, there's really not a whole lot else to say. It's all that stuff, but it doesn't matter because you probably won't remember in a week or two's time anyway. So, it's very bizarre they got this cast. I'm not really sure what the sale for them was, but I don't know. So yeah, that's what life is. Kind of there are a lot better things you could be doing, a lot better movies you could be seeing, particularly in this vein. But we're just left with this for now, I guess. So as you know, I'll be seeing Ghost in the Shell tomorrow. I don't know when you're seeing this, but I assume not long after I turn the camera off. But and so yeah, we'll see what that does. We'll see if some, you know, we'll see if anything is elevated after the past few. We were on a streak there, but we're really falling behind now. Power Rangers followed by The Shack, followed by Life. That streak we were on, yeah. So let's see if we can get that back. So yes, in the meantime, we're done here.